Who are you?
If you've been sent an invitation, you would know that I am Audrey Forbes-Hamilton. And this is Richard de Vere.
A self-made foreign millionaire and social climber.
Without any help from the people who hold the purse strings.
We don't get many white rhino on this estate.
It looked like the cosiest sitcom on British television. A crumbling manor, a bankrupt aristocrat, and a self-made millionaire who buys everything she owns except her heart. But behind the perfect English countryside and that legendary on-screen chemistry, the real story of To the Manor Born is far darker, far stranger, and far more human than anything that ever made it to screen. Secret number 1, Keith fought to make it.
But is the lady of the house at home?
Who should I say is calling?
Who is it, Ravenshaw?
I'm about to ascertain, madam.
If it's Jehovah's Witnesses, you can tell them that they're too late.
Here's where the real story starts, and it's not the one you'd expect. To the Manor Born was not originally a television show at all. Peter Spence wrote it as a radio script, and it was Penelope Keith herself who pushed to get it onto television. When she read the script, she considered it one of the best she had ever been offered. Rather than simply accept the role in a radio production, she took the unusual step of personally approaching BBC Television's head of light entertainment, John Howard Davis, and asking him to consider it for television. Without that intervention, To the Manor Born might have aired quietly on Radio 4 and been forgotten entirely. What makes this remarkable is what it tells you about Keith's instincts. She recognised from a cold read of an unproduced script by a relatively unknown writer that something extraordinary was there. The BBC agreed, the television series was commissioned, and the rest is history. But it was Keith's initiative, not the BBC's, that set it in motion. The show that 23 million people fell in love with existed because its lead actress wanted it badly enough to go and make it happen herself.
We must be good neighbors. We will make this a really happy estate.
I was under the impression that it always was.
Secret number 2. Class was the villain.
Ravenshaw, I want a word about your bell indicator. It didn't occur to me to ask where you got it from, but none of the bells at the manor are functioning properly.
To the Manor Born is usually described as a romantic comedy about class differences. And on the surface, that is exactly what it is. But look more carefully at what the show is actually saying, and the picture becomes considerably darker. Audrey is not simply a woman who has lost her home. She is a woman whose entire identity, self-worth, and reason for existing has been constructed by a class system that valued her only for what she owned and who she married. When the manor goes, she doesn't just lose a house, she loses herself. What makes this dark secret so uncomfortable is that it applies well beyond Audrey. The England she represents, the England of inherited position, of ancestral houses, of knowing one's place without being told, was already collapsing by 1979. She is not a joke. She is a monument to something that was dying, and every time she straightens her back and lifts her chin and refuses to let de Vere see her worry, she is doing the only thing left available to her, performing dignity in the ruins of a world that no longer exists. The comedy comes from watching her refuse to acknowledge that. The tragedy is that she is right to.
Can you see me eking out my days listening to the Archers and waiting for the mobile library?
Secret number 3. De Vere was a gamble.
Good morning.
Mr. de Vere, the cigars have arrived, sir. And your horse and hound?
Oh, thank you.
The role of Richard de Vere, the Czech-born self-made millionaire who buys Grantley Manor and falls helplessly, patiently in love with its former owner, was not straightforwardly cast either. Peter Bowles was regarded by some at the BBC as a risk. The concern was that British audiences in 1979 might not warm to a character defined partly by his foreignness and his money, that viewers would side with Audrey's resistance rather than root for the relationship. If that had happened, the show would have had no engine. It would have been a comedy about a snob who never changed, which is funny for one episode and exhausting for 3 series. What rescued the gamble was Bowles himself. He brought to de Vere something nobody had quite anticipated. A man of genuine dignity and warmth, whose self-made success never made him aggressive or arrogant, and whose patience with Audrey's snobbery was itself a form of quiet, unspoken grace. The audience didn't just warm to him, they loved him. and that love transformed the show from a class comedy into something that felt, against all expectations, like a genuine love story. Keep watching, because what we're about to tell you about the off-screen reality of this relationship will surprise you considerably.
Of course, make yourself at home. Oh, sorry, I could have expressed that better, couldn't I? It's just that it's so very pleasant to see you.
Secret number 4. The numbers were staggering.
Mr. DeVere, I really think we should be going now.
Anderson, I want this place.
Oh, impossible, sir. We must leave at once.
Let's go through here.
Brace yourself for this one. The numbers are almost impossible to comprehend by modern standards. The final episode of To the Manor Born's first series, broadcast in November 1979, was watched by approximately 23 million people. To put that in perspective, that is roughly 1 in 3 of every man, woman and child living in Britain at the time, all sitting down simultaneously to watch Audrey Forbes-Hamilton navigate her feelings for the man who bought her house. The BBC had not anticipated anything close to those figures. The show had been commissioned as a solid mid-range sitcom and became, within weeks, a national event. The kind of programme that emptied pubs and dominated the following morning's conversations across the country. Cast members have described the disorientating experience of becoming recognisable overnight, of a level of public attention that the modest production circumstances had given absolutely no indication was coming. Penelope Keith has spoken about being approached in supermarkets, on trains, in restaurants, by people who discussed Audrey as if she was someone they personally knew and worried about. In a very real sense, for 23 million viewers, she was. That level of cultural penetration, an entire nation simultaneously inside the same story, is something modern television, fragmented across hundreds of platforms, may never again be capable of producing. If you're enjoying this and we're only halfway through, hit that subscribe button right now, because we have plenty more British television history where this came from. And stay with us, because secret number 7 reveals the dark side of creating one of Britain's most beloved shows. And it's not what you'd expect.
Infill panels, good British oak, the monarch of timbers.
May I recommend the German, Mum?
Certainly not, I always buy British.
Secret number 5. The manor was fake.
Hello. Everything all right? My house is falling about my ears.
Here's something that will permanently alter the way you picture Grantley Manor. The ancestral home at the centre of the show, the house that Audrey loses, that De Vere buys, that defines the entire premise, was not a real manor house. Or rather, it was 2 places that had never met each other, stitched together by television production into a single location that existed only on screen. The exterior shots were filmed at Cricket St Thomas in Somerset, a genuine country estate with the scale and grandeur the show required. The interiors were shot entirely in BBC studios in London, with sets built to suggest a continuity with the exterior that physically didn't exist. The drawing room where Audrey held court was hundreds of miles from the front door she swept out of. Cricket St Thomas has since become a tourist attraction, partly on the strength of its connection to the show. It now houses a wildlife park and hotel, and its link to the Manor Born features prominently in visitor materials. People travel specifically to stand in front of a house that, in the show's reality, only ever existed from the outside. The inside, the corridors, the rooms, the spaces where the drama actually happened, those were always in a studio in London. The manor that millions of viewers believed in was, from the inside, always imaginary.
Do watch out for bends, everybody. You can't be too careful with avocados.
Secret number 6. The life behind Audrey.
Now, the real problem is that while you have to soldier on in defence of the beleaguered badger and so forth, without any help from the people who hold the purse string.
Here's something that changes how you see the performance. Penelope Keith married her husband Rodney Timpson in 1978, the year before To the Manor Born began filming. They had no children during the show's run, and it was not until 1988, a full decade into their marriage, that they adopted 2 young brothers. Keith has always been intensely private about her personal life.
We don't get many white rhino on this estate.
rarely discussing her family in interviews and carefully guarding what happens behind closed doors. That privacy is itself a kind of performance, the same absolute self-possession that defines Audrey Forbes-Hamilton on screen. What's striking is the parallel between the character and the woman. Audrey's defining quality is her refusal to let the world see what it cost her to keep going. Keith's defining quality off-screen is exactly the same. For years, audiences watched a woman performing magnificent composure while knowing nothing about the private life that sat underneath it. That gap between the armoured public figure and the private person is what gave the performance its depth. You cannot manufacture that kind of authenticity. It comes from somewhere real, even when no one outside knows exactly where.
Sandwich, anyone? It's all right. Cheese and cucumber. What did you think it was? White rhino?
Secret number 7. One perfect idea.
Anyway, it's always a pleasure to visit my private patients. After all, that's what you pay me for.
That reminds me, could you make the account out to me personally, rather than to Cavendish Foods?
Yes, yes.
To the Manor Born was written by Peter Spence, a name not spoken in the same breath as the great architects of British sitcom. There's a precise reason for that. Spence was not an established comedy writer when he created the show, and he never came close to replicating its success afterwards. To the Manor Born was, in the most exact sense, a lightning-in-a-bottle achievement. A writer finding a concept so perfectly calibrated to its historical moment that it transcended the limitations of everything around it. Spence has spoken with candid honesty about the strange experience of creating something that became a cultural institution and then finding himself unable to follow it. The show's success was so total, so specifically tied to its concept, its cast, and its moment, that it left him stranded in its wake. Every subsequent project was measured against something that had been, in significant part, a gift from circumstances arriving at exactly the right time. There is something genuinely melancholy about that position, to have your name attached to a piece of television that millions of people love, and to know that the thing they love cannot be repeated. Spence created one of the most watched sitcoms in British history. He never found the door it opened.
Thank you very much. That will be all.
But, you haven't made a decision yet, Mum.
On the contrary, I've decided that all your prices are far too high.
Secret number 8. The ending was protected.
Hello, Mother. Did you see that?
That crash landing, I saw.
Well, it's the first time I've done it on my own.
To the Manor Born ran for 3 series between 1979 and 1981 and then stopped. Not because it had failed, but because Penelope Keith and Peter Bowles both believed the story had reached its natural conclusion. The 1981 Christmas special ended with Audrey and Richard's wedding, and the creative team treated that as a full stop worth protecting. What almost nobody knew was how close a 4th series came to being made in the years that followed. There were approaches, discussions, moments when commercial logic came very close to overriding artistic logic. Each time the decision was made that the ending they had created was worth more than anything a continuation might produce. The discipline required to protect a successful ending rather than exploit it is rarer in television than audiences ever realise. Most shows continue until they fail. To the Manor Born stopped while it was still loved, a quiet, uncelebrated decision that is one of the main reasons its reputation has remained intact across 4 decades. Endings matter. This one was chosen rather than arrived at, and that choice made all the difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom.
Secret number 9. The revival divided everyone.
What is going on? You mean... Marjorie, do you know something about this?
When To the Manor Born returned for a one-off special in 2007, 26 years after the original ended, the reaction was not the uncomplicated celebration the BBC had hoped for. Critical opinion divided sharply. Many reviewers argued that returning to Audrey and Richard after a quarter of a century was an act of nostalgia that could only diminish what had come before. Others felt that seeing Keith and Bowles together again visibly older, with all the weight of the original series between them, added an emotional dimension the original never quite had. The special drew large audiences, because of course it did, but the conversation around it was more anxious than celebratory. It raised a question that every revival must eventually confront. Is the desire to return to something beloved an act of affection, or simply an act of appetite? In the case of To the Manor Born, the answer remained genuinely contested. What the 2007 special demonstrated, perhaps unintentionally, was that the original had been so perfectly shaped that any addition to it changed its outline. Some things are better remembered than revisited. The audience knew that. The BBC probably did too. They commissioned it anyway.
This is your anniversary party. A surprise party. Would you all excuse us just for a moment, please?
Secret number 10. What it was really about.
I think you've been deceiving me.
What makes you say that?
You've donated a new scout hut.
Oh, that.
To the Manor Born endures not because it is a love story, though it is one of the finest in British sitcom history. It endures not because it is funny, though it is that in abundance. It endures because it caught a specific, unrepeatable moment in British social history. 1979, the year everything changed, when the old-class certainties were visibly crumbling and nobody could quite agree on what was going to replace them. Audrey Forbes-Hamilton is not a comic figure. She is Britain itself at that moment. Proud, reduced, magnificently resistant to acknowledging what has changed, and slowly, reluctantly, finding that the future might not be the catastrophe she feared. Richard de Vere is not a punchline. He is the future arriving. Self-made, foreign-born, patient, and decent in ways the old order never required itself to be. Their love story is also a national reckoning, conducted at the level of a sitcom in a house in Somerset, watched by 23 million people who were themselves living through the same upheaval. That is why it still works. That is why, more than 40 years later, a new audience can sit down and find something true in it. The specifics are period detail, the substance. What do we owe to the past and what do we owe to the future, and what happens when those two debts cannot both be paid is not period detail at all. It is permanent. And To the Manor Born, for all its cricket lawns and silver teapots and perfectly timed comic pauses, always knew it.